after an amazing first round at the Tata Steel Chess Masters 2026, which ended in a draw from a winning position for the world champion Gukesh. He now takes on the ultra creative Jorden van Foreest in the second round. Look at Gukesh there adjusting all his pieces. Jorden writing down his score sheet. This promises to be a very exciting clash because with Gukesh having the white pieces, he'll definitely try to push. And Jorden, we all know him. He just loves to play creative chess. He always has new ideas up his sleeve. In the background, we can see Mikhail Abel, the famous writer of the Anand Files there. He is in and around in that area. He's covering the tournament. The Tata Steel Chess is such a prestigious event, and we have so many people here today because it's a Sunday and it's just the second round of the event. But the players really want to do well in the initial rounds to set the tone for the tournament. A handshake and off we go. Gukesh opens the game with d4. D4 has been an opening that has been played in this tournament by quite a few players, much more popular I feel than E4. It's kind of trends, yeah, in tournaments. Some tournaments you see only E4, E4, E4 everywhere, Sicilians and Italians and so on, and here you can see more and more D4s. Pawn comes up to C4 and Jorden now. Well, E6 is by far the most popular way to play this position, but he goes G6 already. We are excited because this will lead to a more fighting game. Gukesh goes H4. Full throttle ahead. He plays his pawn to H4, and we all know that if Jorden wants to play D5 here, then after takes and H5 becomes dangerous. So he goes bishop G7. And Gukesh now plays his knight out to C3. He wants to play pawn to E4, grab hold of the space in the center. He goes pawn to D6. So Jorden takes the King's Indian setup approach. And Gukesh takes a lot of space here with pawn to E4. The pawn on H4 does stand out, does weaken the G4 square a bit. But it'll all depend on the setup that Gukesh takes now. He can push his pawn forward with D5, but he takes on C5. And with this, he is willing to actually maybe go into an endgame here. But Jorden says, I'm going Queen A5. Take the pawn on E4 is a big threat. So bishop D2 played. And queen takes C5. And the bishop comes out to E2. He goes pawn to H5, just blocking the pawn on H4. White now has a Marozzi setup with good space in the center. The knight comes out to F3. And white would like to castle next, play rook C1, play knight D5. The position is free-flowing. Bishop comes out to G4 to put pressure on the knight on F3. White castles here. And black also castles. Now, how do you build the position? Rook C1 makes a lot of sense. Also remember, like taking on F3 and taking on C4, even if the rook was not here, doesn't make sense because you have E5 attacking the B7 pawn. Ooh, Jorden anyway takes the knight on F3. I think one of the reasons why he's done that is because the knight was controlling two very important squares here on E5 and D4. So after you capture it, now suddenly the dark squares have become weaker. Knight comes out to C6, controlling the D4 square and the E5 square. And Gukesh goes knight to D5. He's already creating this pressure in the position. He's looking at the E7 pawn. He's also looking at the C7 square here. And now Queen D4 played by Jorden and Bishop G5. I would have imagined that Bishop C3 takes. This could be a nice position to play for Gukesh. Kind of risk-free in a way. But bishop g5 is intense because he now gives up the b2 pawn. And Jorden is like, Gukesh, what's on your mind? Gukesh says, I have rook b1 on the mind. I want to take on b7. I'm attacking the e7 pawn. He takes on a2 as well. Queen takes a2. Now eyeing the c4 pawn. Rook takes the pawn on b7. Still putting pressure here. He goes queen a6. That makes sense because if he would have taken c4 and rook c7 was winning the game for white. So queen a6, queen b1. It's amazing how Gukesh continues to keep up the pressure here. One of the ideas could potentially be queen to b5 maybe. He takes on d5. And now, what should you take with? Should you take with the c pawn? Should you take with the e pawn? I guess taking with the e pawn. He takes cd5 here. And now knight jumps into d4, attacking the bishop on f3. Takes on e7. He's attacking the rook, also the pawn. And rook comes to e8, putting pressure on the bishop on e7. Gukesh comes back to g5. Well, a better move for black was rook fc8. And black would have had a lot of pressure in this position, especially with the knight on d4. But now queen a3. And you can see that Jorden doesn't want to take the bishop because taking here somehow gives white a better position. But keeping this pieces on the board, bishop e3, is putting Jorden under pressure. He's starting to push the a5 pawn. Now the only way in which Gukesh can create something is to capture the c5. Rook c1, rook c7 makes a lot of sense. Also, we have to keep in mind, there you go, he goes rook c1 with the idea of rook c7. There's e5, which could open up this diagonal for the queen. And Jorden very quickly is looking for the c file to be challenged. He goes rook fc8 and he tells Gukesh, you cannot enter in here. Well, you have to be careful as Gukesh because your position is nice. But on the other hand, take, it could be quite possible that you can fall under big pressure. Especially if the pawn on a5 starts to move ahead. Although here there's a big tactic in the position. You can take and give a check and you win the rook. But Jorden seems to be very confident. He's not impacted and Gukesh, boom, sacks his rook. Wow. The rook is sacrificed. Jorden comes in and he says, okay, I must take it. So he takes on f7. Gukesh has to come in with his queen. Queen to b7 check. And now the king goes back to g8. And now you take queen takes c8 check. King h7 played. And now bishop h5. Gukesh sacks his bishop because Gukesh realized that in this position difficult for him to even create some counterplay, especially with this a pawn rushing down. So king h2, bishop e5 check may not be a great move. He takes the knight on d4. Now the f5 square opens up. And so he takes on d4. A queen check. If you go king h8, I have checked from c8. He goes king g8 and now you can go queen e6 check. And now king h7. check, king g8, check. And then you see Jorden looks at the score sheet. Gukesh looks at Jorden. He's looking at the score sheet. Both want to make a draw, I guess. There's nothing more here. And Gukesh calls the arbiter and says this is threefold repetition here. And they agree to a draw. A draw has been agreed in this game. And I think Jorden should be proud of the way he's played here. Both of them analyze after the game. I think after Gukesh played bishop g5 and Jorden took the pawn, there was not even a single moment where he was worse. Meanwhile, Gukesh, well, he tried his best to muddy the waters, but it was not to be. He starts off with two draws in this tournament, and for Jorden, it's the same. He's drawn two games with Thai and Gukesh. With 11 rounds to go, there's still everything to play for.